We start on, the first day of a new era. For decades, we've all believed that countries trading with countries, us making some goods, selling them to other countries, them making goods, selling to us, would make us all better off. And for the first time since the 1930s, really, the American president is saying no. Making America great again means America cutting itself off, big tariff barriers, punishing other countries. The era of global trade is over. It
is extraordinary. I mean, it feels like since Donald Trump has been president, which is just still a very short period, I don't even know if we're at the 2-month mark, we must be around that sort of thing. Everything has changed. I mean, on defence, we know that the kind of post-war consensus has been ripped up. And now, as you say, on trade, I mean, you always remember the sort of Reagan sort of language on this, which is protectionism does not lead to prosperity. That was his big message about free trade. And yet here we are.
Yeah, make America wealthy again. This is, I mean, Trump basically says all the other countries in the world are benefiting from this arrangement. And if we put a big tax on imports into America, it means that either companies have to move to America and make their goods, or you buy American goods. I mean, some nationalists, Ed, will say that's absolutely how you should protect your own manufacturing base.
Yeah, well, Trump has been going on about this for 40 years. If you read things like The Art of the Deal, he goes on about how America's being ripped off. So it's a kind of muscular economic policy. The irony, of course, is that America is able to do this because it's the richest nation on earth. And the reason it's the richest nation on earth is mainly because of the global trading system, and America can export its goods all around the world. And so for people watching this programme, what does it mean if you live in Britain? Well, if you work at Jaguar Land Rover, you're not happy because 100,000 cars from Jaguar Land Rover go to America every year. Now
they'll be 25% more expensive.
They'll be much more expensive. That, in some ways, explains Trump's policy. His hope is that people will be buying American cars, maybe Teslas they'll be buying. And there's some point, Trump holds up this chart and you can see how he might win the argument. Tariffs in Vietnam, 97%. Well, we're hitting back. But you've also got to remember when Trump started his war with China, trade war with China, a lot of American companies moved their manufacturing, which was in China, to countries like Vietnam. So it's an incredibly complex situation. He's put a huge kind of size 10 boot into a global trading system that is incredibly complex, and it risks causing job losses in America, increasing inflation in America, and causing economic recession. I grew up in the 1970s when to buy a television would basically cost you at least a month's salary. It was so hard to have a colour television, and they were made in Britain. And then over the last 40, 50 years, the reason why we have cheaper, affordable, first TVs and then videos and then game consoles is because we've been importing them from Vietnam and China. The same is true with Americans. And if that ends, I mean, if you just take one good example, iPhones, Apple iPhones are made in China. Yep. And Samsung phones are made in Vietnam. Donald Trump now says we're going to have massive tariffs, taxes on those goods coming into America. There's no capability in America to make iPhones. I mean, maybe in 10 years' time or in 5 years' time. In the meantime, Americans are going to pay massively more for their iPhones. And he says it's making America great again. You're going to be better off. He says lower prices. Actually, Americans are going to be worse off.
Absolutely. Well, the price of things, things have been going up and becoming more expensive in America, and things will continue to. But I think the repercussions of this are going to be felt all around the world, because we've had a whole system. The world has been trying to move towards more and more free trade. And we have had this orthodoxy of trying to dismantle these barriers for the reasons that you say. Obviously, post-Brexit, it's been, we've been trying to open up new trade deals. But I am really, really worried about the repercussions for this country and other countries. Look, many will die. And if you look at the numbers, 10% is definitely a lower number than 20% than the EU and lower than
There's a Brexit bonus then, Ayesha?
Well, no, because I would argue that we've paid a heavy...
Zero. It's higher than zero.
It's higher than...
And the government said we would be able to avoid the Trump tariffs. It's not happened.
We absolutely haven't been able to avoid, but the number is lower than... 10 is the lowest that he's put. But I think we, just to give our viewers some perspective, we just had this spring statement where everybody is really, really worried about the economy. The Chancellor has hardly got any headroom between now and the budget, which is going to be coming up in autumn. This is potentially a massive hit to industry, to jobs. If this trade war spins out of control, our interest rates could be affected, inflation could be affected. This could be incredibly serious.
OK, Ed, this is the important thing, isn't it? What does this mean? Does this mean we face more cuts in spending because there's just less coming into the economy? Or does it mean taxes are going to go up? Or would you say to the Prime Minister, get back over to America, offer something even more than the royal visit? I mean, I'm not sure how you top a royal flush, and sort a deal out where we don't pay any taxes at all.
You hand Buckingham Palace to Donald Trump. I mean, that is the trump card that he has. He could just hand over Buckingham Palace, Windsor Castle, maybe a golf course at Sandringham. That could tip the balance. But, I mean, there's one saving. I mean, we lament the loss of manufacturing in the UK, but in some ways there is a silver lining, which is we tend to be a service economy. And our huge, we have massive trade with America, but about 2/3 of that is services, which is not subject to tariffs. But, I mean, Ayesha mentioned Brexit. I'm obviously a foaming at the mouth Remainer, and just to annoy at least half your viewers, we've tried protectionism after Brexit because we put up trade barriers by leaving the single market. And we've seen the massive increase in bureaucracy and the impact on our economy. And that's the kind of thing that happens when you stick massive trade barriers into a global free trading system.
And here, this is about to get very complicated because the UK 10%, but EU facing 20% tariffs. I think at the moment the British government is saying we're going to negotiate a deal. We're not going to retaliate, but I think Europe will retaliate.
Yeah.
The interesting question of Northern Ireland.
Yes, exactly.
Northern Ireland will face 10% tariffs because they're part of the UK, not 20%. But if the EU retaliates and puts up barriers to American goods, that has to apply in Northern Ireland as well because they're part of the EU customs area. That's how they avoid that barrier between the north and south of Ireland. What happens then? Does Donald Trump say, well, Northern Ireland is part of the UK?
It's incredibly...
Or does he say it's part of the EU and
I think he'll say it's part of America probably at that point. He'll
send J.D. Vance over
to Belfast
with his partner to have a visit and to say the British government has let Northern Ireland down for decades. The American.
He could do an event in front of the Titanic sort of museum in terms of...
You'll say it would never have sunk if it had been made in America.
Exactly.
That's true.
But yeah, I mean, you make a very, very good point. I mean, it is really, really kind of... It's so hard to get your head around where this may end up. And interestingly, if you look at the responses from most leaders, they are furious. They haven't rushed to retaliation yet. Everybody is considering their options. And certainly a lot of the big business organisations, the CBI, the Federation of Small Business and others, have advocated very heavily, just hold off immediate retaliation.
But there are... Do you know what's really interesting, though? In Canada, they've got an election coming up. Mark Carney is the Prime Minister, is fighting Trump. In Australia, they've just called an election. Both the leader of the opposition and the Prime Minister are fighting Trump. They're saying, we're going to stand up for Australia against Trump. We're going to stand up from Canada against Trump. The EU, we're going to stand up for the EU against Trump. And in Britain at the moment, we're saying...
Come and meet the king.
No, I mean, I think Keir Starmer is right.
I was just asking.
Come on.
I think is the Starmer plan the right plan?
No, I mean, I think Keir Starmer's done the right... thing in kind of going softly with Donald Trump. I mean, we don't have an election in this country. We won't have one for another 3 years. And to a certain extent, we have been let off the hook. I mean, Canada has been treated absolutely brutally. But this is the point, the massive geopolitical implications. Don't forget, under Trump 1, President Xi of China went to Davos. The communist president of China went to Davos, the home of the global elite, and talked about the free trade system. And you're going to see countries like Vietnam trading back with China when they were trading much more with America. And the irony is, somebody made the point, in this Australian election, this is the first election where the Chinese haven't interfered. It's the Americans interfering in an Australian election. I mean, it's full of irony, this
I'm
whole
provoking
approach.
you, Ayesha.
Yeah, I know you are, but...
No, I'm deliberately provoking you.
No, I can sense I'm being deliberately provoked. It's fine. I'm ready to rise to the challenge. Listen, I take the point about Mark Carney, and everyone's loving Mark Carney at the moment. However, the situation with Canada is very different from us. For a start, Trump went in studs up to Canada, right? He went on a full-on attack saying, you know, you're scavenging off us and I want the whole of you. You're going to be the next American state. So he went in studs up with Canada, to the point where the Liberals in Canada were basically, you know, heading towards the floor. They were doing so badly. The country has unified against Trump, which has given Mark Carney a kind of a rallying cry. That's not the situation in the UK.
Here? I mean, it sounds good. Unify the country against the common enemy.
But if Donald Trump suddenly said, Britain, we're coming for you and we're going to basically take you over, I'm sure a similar thing would be happening. We are not in that situation yet. We are not in that situation. And I do think if Keir Starmer had gone in, studs up, had a massive, like, ding-dong in the White House, we would be going, what the hell was he doing? Is this guy insane? Why did he go in to have a massive ruck with Donald Trump?
I think he's thinking about Ukraine. What Keir Starmer thinks is that the Europeans are in a row with him, the Canadians, the Australians, everybody else in, and we're in danger of America walking away from the defence of Europe and Ukraine. Somebody's got to keep talking to the White House, and Keir Starmer thinks if I don't, then America's going to walk away. So I think he's actually thinking it's not about the tariffs. It's about kind of defence of Europe.
I think he's thinking about everything in the round. I think he's thinking about everything in the round. And I think for any sort of sensible Prime Minister, the relationship with America is still considered very, very important. But what I will concede is that a point may come, and let's see where things get to, because remember, this is also an opening gambit from Trump, because there have been times where he's talked tough, he's come in and then he's changed. Like, if you look at the tariffs he said about Canada and Mexico at the beginning, he did actually move his position on that because his own automotive manufacturers came back. The other thing we haven't talked about is the one country which is not on this list, given that he's put islands on this list that are only inhabited by penguins, the Herd Islands. Russia is not on this list, and that tells you a lot.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah,
That's
Russia,
breaking news.
Yeah, Russia is not on this list.
Maybe
Russia and North
Russia's
Korea.
sanctioned up to its eyeballs already, but...
Yeah.
Russia is not on this list, which I think tells us a lot.
Right, the one question we haven't asked is how is this going to affect you if you've bought products from Meghan Markle's new range? Frankly, that is the big question this morning. But if you did want to buy products from her new range...
The big question for whom?
For anyone who might want to buy them, but they've all sold out. So here we go. This is the As Ever line. It was finally launched. You could buy £11 jars of jam, although I think they're technically labelled fruit spread, and honey is £22.
£11 for a jar of jam?
Yes.
£11?
£11.
It's not just any jam, it's a Meghan Markle
How much is that per spread?
Well, I'm not quite sure how big. Presumably, they look quite small, these jars of jam. But we reported yesterday, didn't we? We were talking about this with Lorraine. Frankly, they are historic objects of a sort of royal dimension. Who wouldn't go and buy them? Did you put in an order, Ayesha?
I didn't. I have to say, I actually reviewed the show for Lorraine, and I've been quite supportive of Meghan. I mean, the show is absolutely terrible. I have to say, it is absolutely terrible.
I disagree.
But
I enjoyed every episode.
What? Fair play to her. If she wants to make some money and she wants to get a business going and people are buying a product, why not?
Ed?
Yeah, I'm totally up for it. I mean,
why not?
Wouldn't you,
Have you bought a jar of the honey?
No, I haven't, but I've bought stuff off other celebrity websites, and they're great talking points.
Which particular website?
Well, I bought something from Gwyneth Paltrow's Goop, you know.
Did you?
You've got
Did you buy the candle?
You've got to go and buy stuff, you know,
what
for talking points.
She sells all sorts of things. Some of which are quite
But
innovative.
I don't know, can you buy these only in America? Do I have to ring up a friend of mine in America and get them to buy it off the website? Can I buy it from the comfort of my home in West?
You can't buy them, they're sold out.
Stop diverting. What did you buy from Gwyneth Paltrow's
Well, I
website?
just bought something from Gwyneth Paltrow's website, you know, and I bought it in America, and when I collected it and I went through security and they took it out of my bag, it was slightly embarrassing.
Was it an aid or a toy?
Well, it was just, it was a domestic product.
When you say domestic?
You know, it was something you put on your shelf.
Oh.
Yeah.
Was it a candle?
It was a decorative object.
Was it a candle?
Put on your shelf.
Was it the candle? Was it the candle?
Well, I think you'd have to come around my house and find out, wouldn't you?
Was it for the kitchen? Was it for the kitchen, the lounge, or the bedroom?
It wasn't for the bedroom.
Oh, I see. Fine. Okay.
That's all right. OK.
I just
Everyone
realised
stands down.
Everyone's like,
we're not going to get an Ofcom complaint this morning.
Have they actually got the flower sprinkles? Was the thing that I thought was hilarious. Everything you're laughing, everything was sprinkled with these flowers.
Everything was sprinkled.
Flower petals.
With the dried flower sprinkles. Yeah. And yes, you can buy them for £12.
Or what you could do if you get any old
Can you
potpourri,
buy them in the
just
UK?
smash up the potpourri and sprinkle it on
what's
everything.
What's great about them is you buy the jar of jam for 11 quid and you then eat it. You can then make your own bath salts, put them in the jar and then leave them for your guests.
The key about these, you don't eat the jam. You keep it.
Yes.
You've got to keep it.
Oh, I
Yes.
see.
You've got to keep it. You can't eat the jam.
No, I think it loses its value if it's
talking
just a
point.
pot.
It's in the kitchen.
An empty pot.
Your friends come round for dinner. Everyone talks
But
about
you know
the
what?
jam.
Why
you
not?
have a whole
Listen,
Meghan Markle
she
theme.
is-
Did you light your Gwyneth Paltrow candle?
Nope, absolutely not.
So it just sits there?
Yeah, it's a decorative object.
Ayesha.
But listen, she has had a lot of stick. She's a big brand. She's a savvy kind of person. Why not?
I agree.
If she's cleaning up, you know,
And that
good for
jam
her.
will be worth...
I tell you, she doesn't do any cleaning up. Somebody else does that.
Well,
That jam will
good
be
for
worth
her.
10
Good
times
for her.
more. That jam
As,
will be
as
worth
an
10 times
emancipated
more.
woman, good for her.
In a
there will
year's
be
time, you'll be able to sell that jam on, what's it called? Yahoo or something.
eBay.
eBay.
Cookie mix is £11. Herbal tea is £9. Crepe mix is £11. Right, look.
Mind you,
You
to be
can
honest-
make crepes with flour, an egg and some milk. You don't need to
But
spend
Susanna,
£11 on
we
a box.
know
but
that a
as
lot
ever,
of
if you
people
wanna be
like
ripped off, you
luxury
can buy this.
projects. A lot of people like luxury products. Also, the way inflation is going, you're not far off half these products being that price.
A luxury pancake mix. How do you make a pancake mix more luxurious than a non-luxurious pancake
You just go into any of these fancy places like Fortnum & Mason's, people are buying all kinds of nonsense, which are like posh stuff.
Yeah.
I think good luck to her, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I
She
think good
knows her
luck to her.
marketplace.
And
if
in
people,
fact-
if people
in
want
fact-
to buy this, they do.
If you go to Fortnum & Mason, jam only costs you £6.
And the king...
I don't believe that. I bet there's more
the
expensive
Prince of
jam
the
in
king, when he
Fortnum
was the
&
Prince of Wales, had Dutchy originals. We all
Exactly.
paid a bit of a markup for a nice
Exactly.
biscuit.
Yeah.
There is a controversy, of course, whatever Meghan Markle does
Exactly.
and whether she is a role model. And I'm sure a lot of our viewers would have a view on that. But what do you think about this proposal by the Education Secretary? We spoke to her, in fact, yesterday, but today she's going to say, Bridget Phillipson, she wants more men in the classroom, more men to become teachers. I have a feeling that the figure at the moment is only about 1 in 8 of teachers is 1 in 7, excuse me, is a man. Boys' behaviour and their influences are a defining issue of our time. If you have male role models, they will teach, guide and lead boys. It follows on from, of course, what Sir Gareth Southgate, former England manager, said about toxic online influences and the need to raise a generation of boys. The Education Secretary is going to say with the strength to reject that hatred. It can't be a bad idea, but there are reasons, aren't there, presumably, why men don't want to be teachers at the same rate as women.
I think it's really important to address this. I think it is. I think there is a massive kind of imbalance of not having enough male teachers, and I think we've had conversations on your show post adolescence, and I think men having good role models, as they're growing up, and schools are a really, really important part of that. So I think this is a good thing. I think some of the reasons why men don't want to go into teaching is it's because there's fewer men. It's probably not seen as something for them. We know that they've been trying to get more men into primary school education as well, which is really important. But also for a lot of teachers, paying conditions are pretty bruising. Teachers have to deal with a lot at school. Now, it's not just teaching kids. They have to do a lot of social work. Now we're expecting teachers to do, more of that holistic stuff as well. But I think anything to get more men in is a good idea.
Absolutely. I mean, I don't know why. It'd be interesting to know what the statistics were, 10 years ago, why it does seem to be that there are far fewer men teaching, particularly in primary schools, and there's got to be some kind of a balance for schools.
Well, why
but there
don't we
needs to
ask
be
someone
some
who
analysis.
used to be the Secretary of
yes.
State for that particular area?
Yes.
I mean, it was all fine when I was there.
But what do you think? What is the reason why only 1 in 7 teachers are men, do you think?
I think Ed just made an important point, which is that if you look in primary school, there is a huge imbalance. Into secondary schools, I mean, there'll be loads and loads of male secondary school teachers preparing at the moment, having their breakfast off to school. I think it's much, much closer. But, people make career choices and I don't know what the answer.
No. Well, Bridget Phillipson needs to come up with an answer because you need to address that if you're going to encourage more men into the profession.
Can I ask Ed a question? I forgot to ask him earlier.
I'm not sure that's...
You don't have to ask me for permission.
I'm not sure that's part of the format.
If you were Chancellor now, what would you think about doing retaliation tariffs now?
On tariffs?
Yeah, if you were Chancellor.
You're hopping about a bit there, Ayesha.
No, I just should have asked a question earlier, but I just in my mind.
You've rather taken us back to the previous...
I just wanted to ask quickly.
I think that Keir Starmer is right not to pick a fight. And I think for foreign defence security policy as much as economic policy, because it's important to keep the American conversation about Ukraine going. But it's very interesting in British politics at the moment. Nigel Farage is silent. Kemi Badenoch is muted.
Yes.
Keir Starmer is being... looks meek, and Ed Davey is the one who is leading the charge, saying we should have a fight. And there will come a point, if Trump really doubles down on the fight, where people will say, well, we've got to fight back. Yeah. And at that point, there's a danger of looking behind the curve.
And also the SNP in Scotland, I think, will fight back at some point as well.
But it is an interesting point how it affects our politics, because obviously, you know, the rise of reform, local elections next month, is this going to have a big backlash on Nigel Farage? There was a time when populists thought we're going to ride Trump's coattails.
Can we just kind of stick back onto the thing you were raising about kids and because I had a very interesting poll. There's a charity called the John Smith Centre, set up in the name of former John Smith. Michael Gove is on the board as well as myself. They did a poll about young people's attitudes to politics and to government and optimism, but they asked 16 to 29-year-olds a question about social media. They asked, would you ban social media for under 16s? And the answer was men 64% yes, 32% no, women 72% yes, 23% no. So 16 to 29-year-olds who've grown up with social media in their lives now say by a large majority they would not allow under 16-year-olds to be on social media. I was really taken aback by that because I don't think I had thought, banning was the right thing. But young people who've gone through this do think that it has, I guess, a toxic or a negative influence, not just on young people's lives, but I guess on their lives.
I totally agree. And in fact, I was actually at the report of the launch of the report in Parliament a couple of nights ago. Really, really interesting report. Brilliant bit of research. I do think public attitudes are shifting on social media, and I do think you hear... I mean, I was chatting with a 15-year-old the other day who said, I actually hate my phone now. I do want my access to my phone restricted. He said, you grown-ups, you should be restricting that for people my age. Young people have cottoned on that it's not good for their brain. It's the equivalent of tobacco for their brains.
Totally.
It really is.
It's like a drug.
It is
right.
like a drug. And I do think the government should go further on this. I think it's what parents want. I think young people want it. We're joining up the dots now on all of these things. And I do think your brain is still forming. Even as adults, we shouldn't have too much time on social media. I think we're going to look back at this era and think, what did we do? We gave young kids access to this stuff way, way, way too early.
Ed, I mean, it would take a piece of legislation, really, wouldn't it? Because you can't, if you leave it to individual families, if you leave it to parents, children say, but my best mate's got Snapchat, my best mate's got Instagram. You can't leave them isolated.
Yeah,
you need government support.
I think a ban is a really hard thing to implement. But, I mean, governments keep saying we're going to legislate to ban phones in schools, but to all intents and purposes, there is a ban in schools. There is a ban in schools. So that's a political gimmick.
It's what happens at 10 at night in the bedroom.
We have the Online Safety Act, which, funny enough, the Trump administration is against as a curb on free speech. But that is, alongside Brussels, the first bit of proper regulation that allows a regulator, in this case Ofcom,
what these young people are saying,
social media companies for not putting in
protections. It's not about individual bits of content.
Absolutely.
It's the fact it's there like a tap they can't turn off.
I mean,
we're going to see you again before the end of the programme. We're going to have to turn that tap off now.
And also, we're going to be talking to Johnny Reynolds, the Business Secretary, who's negotiating the deal with Trump.
Yeah.
We're going to ask him whether trading lighter regulation with AI companies would be a good deal.
Yeah. Thank you. We'll see you before the end of the programme.
In the years since Jacob Dunne threw a punch that killed 28-year-old James Hodgkinson, he's turned his life around with help from one of those he hurt the most, his victim's mother.
He was through a process known as restorative justice, and James's mum, Joan, made contact with her son's killer, Jacob, and they now campaign together for restorative justice to be widely available to victims and offenders. Joan and Jacob are with us now. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
Joan, most people, I can imagine, would think they may not have the ability to sit next to the person who killed their son. But you've gone further than that. You worked together. You've formed a bond, haven't you? How have you managed to do that?
Seeing the good in Jacob when he come out of prison. When he was in prison, we didn't understand why he'd done it. We didn't know what character he was, whether he'd come out and just reoffend. So this is why we started restorative justice. Firstly, to get answers to what happened that night, and then to see what sort of character he was, and you know, hopefully we could change so it wouldn't happen again to somebody else.
Jacob, what did happen that night that makes any sense?
Nothing makes sense, and there's a line in the play where it just that says it doesn't make sense. There's no justification. Other than that, I threw a single punch for no reason on false information from my friends, and didn't think, and paid the ultimate price.
And what happened to James was that you threw the punch.
I threw the punch, yeah.
And he fell and hit his head.
Hit his head, yeah.
And 9 days later, he died in hospital. So you were convicted of manslaughter.
That's right.
Because you had not intended to kill him.
Yeah.
Joan, did that make a difference? The fact
No.
that it wasn't an intention to kill, or...
It does now, but at the time it didn't. He'd still taken my son's life. My son's life was worth more than 14 months.
And that's what he got.
Yeah.
You were...
That's how I looked at it then.
Yeah. Which didn't feel like justice for
No,
taking a
not
life,
at all.
whether it was intentional or not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what about the restorative justice process did change things to the point where it started to make sense to you?
So when the victims, when the restorative justice mediations start, they come to you and you ask the questions. They're assessing you all the time to see exactly what you want from it. And then when they brought the answers back from Jacob, what they could, you get a feeling of what sort of character he is, because they don't just say, oh, he said this, he said that. They say, oh, he was upset at this, he struggled to answer that. So you're getting a feeling of the person behind that.
And I think what's also important is Joan had questions that the criminal justice system couldn't answer. No. So that's why restorative justice works. There's a lot of questions that victims of crime have about the harm, about why that happened, that don't come out because I pled guilty. A lot of people might plead guilty, and then there's no trial, all the information doesn't come out. So justice is done to victims of crime, not with victims of crime.
Can I ask you, Joan, because this restorative justice, it's a choice. It's a conversation that you have with the perpetrator. As I understand it, everybody is offered the opportunity to go through this process, but almost nobody agrees. I think over 90% of people in your position say, no, I don't want it. Only 6% of people do what you did. At the point when you decided to start this dialogue, what was in your mind?
So I wasn't offered it for 16 months after James was killed. Because the police and victim support, they are nervous in a way to offer it to you, because they're like giving you hope that you can get answers. But then if Jacob says no, you're let down again.
Yeah, it's voluntary process.
Right.
Yeah.
But did you think about turning it down, or were you always clear it's what you wanted?
Once we were offered it, then we wanted to give it a go and hope Jacob would join us.
So when I read my brief, our team, who say everybody has this option, is that not right?
Well, it's not offered as verbally offered. Like, the police don't say this is available. So unless you're in that world where you know it is available to begin with, then is it offered?
So the reason why it's only 6% is most people have no idea.
Yes.
Most people have no
and
idea.
you're saying that they should know.
They should know.
They should
You
know.
Yeah.
And 94% of people who have been victims of crime say they can't remember or recall being told about it.
Right.
So although in the victim's code it says every victim of crime has the right
Doesn't
to be
actually
made aware or access restorative justice. Nobody actually knows about it or is being told about it by the people that are meant to be
It
supported.
was obvious to you, Joan, you wanted it. Was it obvious to you that it was something you wanted?
I think it was just because for Joan, we was talking about this last night, for Joan, she kept asking the same questions to the people that were coming and supporting her and her family. And they didn't.
And they were all about you.
They were all about me and what I was doing and whether I was taking accountability and, you know, what...
And only you knew those answers?
I knew those answers, yeah. And when the mediator showed up at the probation office and said, you know, I'd fictionalised Joan because I wanted to dismiss, I didn't want to think about it, I was in denial.
But we've had the families of victims being angry.
Yeah.
The people in the dock aren't even turning up for sentencing to hear their statements.
Yeah.
You not only decided to listen, you chose to be in this voluntary dialogue. How hard was that for you to decide to do?
Everything wanted me to... Because it's about shame, isn't it? It's about how we hold people accountable, but usually when you shame somebody, they just want to run away. That's the natural response to feeling shameful and not being accountable and facing up to it. But I knew it was the right thing to do. I knew that it was going to help David and Joan. I didn't think it was going to help me. I felt if I can just answer their questions and try and help them in some small way to move forward, then something positive might come from this. And it's been one small act of kindness.
But it helped you too?
It helped me too, yes, because it's been a ripple effect of very small acts of kindness, which started off with Joan taking an interest in me, which has then led to me taking an interest in myself, and then has spiralled over the last 10, 15 years into all the stuff that we're now doing.
I think it is incredible what you two are doing, what you have managed to achieve. I can imagine a lot of people are thinking, Joan, how do you get to the point where you don't turn to Jacob and scream, it should be my son here, not you? And how do you manage to get to where you are, that you can describe each other, I presume, as friends?
Yeah, we have a type of friendship. Tear his hair out when he's late for things. He's always on the skin of his teeth, but that is how we are, and we know each other, you know. But to work together on this, it's big. And I mean, people go to see the play and say, how do you do it? But they're seeing it in 2.5 hours, what we've worked for years.
What do you think James would say today if he was sitting here with us and seeing this conversation? Would he be proud of his mum?
I think he'd be totally honoured by everything that's gone on since and the support we're getting. And I think he would be proud of Jacob as well, what he's turned his life around.
And Jacob, where have you got to in your life? Because you were only 19 when it happened.
Yeah, 30,
and it could have written you off, of course. I mean, you know, I would not be able to forgive you in this situation. But I know people get into scraps and you did not intend for what happened to happen.
Exactly.
So where have you got to now with the compassion that Joan has shown you?
Oh, I'm you know, contributing member of the community. I care about my neighbourhood and my community. I have 2 small children. I've broken the cycle of trauma and reoffending. I've got first-class honours in criminology.
Well, that's incredible what you've achieved. It's incredible. And also, you want to say to young men, don't do it. Don't do it.
Don't give in to the peer pressure. You have nothing to prove. You shouldn't be judged on, you know, how hard you are and how, you know, how good you are at fighting or trying to impress your mates. You should be judged on your character and how kind you are and how able you are to express your emotions instead of suppress your emotions.
I think you're both extraordinary.
I think, Joan, though, when Susanna says that in the same situation she could never forgive, she couldn't do what you've done, I mean, isn't the point of restorative justice? You don't know where you're going to end up where you start.
Have you forgiven Jacob?
Yes, I have forgiven Jacob. He knows.
But you didn't know you would do that at the beginning?
No, it was just the questions, that's all. Really, we wanted answers, and also I didn't want Jacob to go out and do it to somebody else, and maybe if Jacob looked at himself, then maybe other people in the same gang would look at themselves, because if you do wrong, there is another way forward.
Honestly, I am left speechless by what you've managed to achieve together. I think it is remarkable. And if you can bring yourself to forgive, you know, you're a remarkable woman.
And the play...
Jacob, congratulations for what you've achieved as well.
Brilliant. The play Punch by James Graham, which tells your story, was on the Nottingham Playhouse last year, I know. It's going to be at the Young Vic in London from the 1st of March to the 26th of April. And I'm sure you've seen it already. Would you recommend people go?
And it's moving to the Apollo Theatre later this year, and available to book now, I think.
Yeah, the Apollo's on from September the 19th for a 10-week run, and we can't believe it's selling out every night, standing ovations.
And there are more people that can help us or come to the play, it supports our message and keeps us being able to fundraise for good causes.
There'll be a lot of our viewers giving you a standing ovation this morning.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you both so much.
Thank you.
If you're affected by any of the issues we've been discussing, you can find advice and support at itv.com/helplines.
In the last hour, Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer has told business chiefs that the government will respond with cool, calm heads after President Trump slapped a 10% tariff on UK goods entering the US.
But Britain's car industry will be hit with a 25% tariff. That's going to have an impact on our economy. So let's ask the Business Secretary, Jonathan Reynolds, how that meeting is going. I can imagine if I was running a business where my costs were going to go up 25% because of a tariff, I might not have a cool, calm head this morning. What reassurance are you going to offer? Are you going to get rid of these tariffs through a special deal with Donald Trump, or are you going to help businesses out in other ways? Morning.
Good morning. Yes. So as it stands this morning, we are obviously disappointed with the decision the US has taken. We have already got a very fair and balanced trading relationship with the US, so we don't believe there is a need for these additional tariffs. We obviously recognise we're in the same basket, the most favourable basket compared to some other countries, but we're disappointed. Now, our work with the US from the moment the new administration has been formed is, as you've said, to seek a deal on a way forward, one that would not just avoid the imposition of things like these tariffs, but actually improve, deepen, strengthen the existing relationship that we have. So that is important work. That work will continue. Of course, we will also take the steps we need to make sure we've got every potential way to respond available to us, to make sure we can give the British people and British workers the protection that they need. We've also got to work on our domestic competitiveness. That's part of our existing agenda. But we are still committed to that deal, as you have asked about, and I do believe there is the potential for that to be a way forward for ourselves and as a template to the rest of the world.
Of course, you wanted that deal to be done in advance of yesterday to avoid these tariffs. That's clearly failed. I just wondered, what deal are you willing to strike? It's clear that you are willing to reduce the taxation on American tech firms, the digital services tax. The Chancellor of the Exchequer seems to be signing up to that. But yesterday we had Bridget Phillipson on, the Education Secretary. We said, would you weaken the regulation of online porn, child safety, use of the internet, availability of dangerous information, which is a huge concern to parents? She said nothing will be done to compromise children's safety, no deal to weaken regulation with the US tech firms. Is that right?
Well, first of all, Ed, you're right to say we wanted and believed a deal could have been done in advance of the decisions yesterday. The President made clear that was not available to any country in the world, and we've got to understand and respect that. You will know I'm not going to talk about the content, the sensitive negotiations that we are having, but fundamentally this is about making sure businesses in the UK have greater market access to the US, and in a whole range of areas. We already have, as I say, a very fair, balanced, strong trading relationship. But there are things we can do
about what your red lines are. What are your red lines? You're clearly willing to cut tax to help American companies. Are you willing to weaken regulation of the tech sector, even if that makes it harder for us to tackle online porn, keep our children safe, prevent the spread of dangerous information? We know Elon Musk refuses to take that information off Twitter at the moment. Are you willing to weaken that regulation? Is that a red line?
Look, Ed, you know I'm not going to share red lines of a sensitive negotiation, but I think you are focused too much on the tech side of this. The major part of this is about goods, is about services access, is about regulation, all the standard parts of trade deals that we have with negotiations with countries all around the world.
But that answer worries me.
I mean, I'm not going to reveal the content of a negotiation.
The answer is we're not willing to put our children's safety at risk. Bridget Phillipson said yesterday, no, we will not put our children's safety at risk by weakening regulation. All you've got to do is say, I agree with Bridget Phillipson.
Of course I agree with Bridget, but
well,
it's also
good,
completely
that's not what
false
you just said a second
to present.
ago.
The United States is not trying to make our children less safe. It's crass to say that. That's not the object of their negotiation. This is about goods. This is about services. This is about market access, the arrangements we have, the regulatory arrangements
so let's
that
talk
we
about
have in relation
goods,
to
and in particular agricultural goods. We know that you are willing to offer lower tariffs on American agricultural goods. Will you be willing to weaken agricultural standards on meat imports into the UK, for example, chlorinated chicken or hormones in beef, or is that a red line?
We already have, as you know, a clear manifesto position to maintain that regime. It's called the SPS regime. It relates to a whole range of other trade negotiations.
But that was before Donald Trump came in and things went wild. Is that still the position?
That is still our manifesto position.
I know, but is that still the position in April 2025?
Yes, that is our position.
So you will not resile from the manifesto commitment to keep those food standards, even if America says that is the price for taking away the 10% tariffs?
Well, I've said 3 times, and I'll say it again, that is our manifesto position. That is what we are committed to. But you will know I'm not going to go through every aspect of an incredibly sensitive negotiation that has huge ramifications for hundreds of thousands of British workers. I can't do that on television and succeed in that negotiation. But this is about strengthening that relationship, making it better, not having the things that were announced last night put in place. I don't think there is a need to do that. And I believe the work we have done gives us the chance to have that conversation in a way that could be successful for ourselves and for the United States.
Can I ask, if someone in America buying a Jaguar Land Rover is going to have to pay 25% more, which obviously affects that business in particular, can we slap a 25% tariff on someone wanting to buy a Tesla here?
Well, we don't put tariffs on individual companies or products. They apply to sectors of the economy, so in this case cars or vans or automotive products. So we have and will always make sure we have the ability to respond with any way we might need to in terms of whether it's American goods coming to the UK
so can
or
we
the
do
impact
it on
of
their
diversion.
Cars here?
We could put in place retaliatory measures that match what the US has decided to do. But the very strong message that I get from British business, particularly over the last few days and weeks, is they support our approach to remain engaged, to remain calm, to negotiate a way through this. We can't rule anything out, nor should we, and the US will understand that. We need the full range of tools available to make sure we can respond in a way that protects our own interests in this difficult situation.
Okay, so you're not automatically going to make it harder for American car manufacturers to sell cars here, but you're not ruling it out.
That's right. So we'll take the steps to make sure we've got every tool available to us. There's some formal stages, some things I'll have to announce in terms of being able to do some of that. But whilst there is the chance for a better way forward, the message from British business to me is remain engaged, get round the table, continue the work that you are doing. That is not only the right thing for them, it is the right thing for the UK's national interest.
Isn't the reality, Jonathan Reynolds, that what's going on here is Donald Trump basically wants Americans to buy American goods?
Yes.
He's cutting himself off from the global economy. As far as Britain is concerned, isn't our priority now the European Union, our wider trading partners, maybe China and India, America? It's a lost cause.
It's a false choice, Ed. So we can get to a better position with the US, I'm certain of that, and we can do that in a way which doesn't preclude us from having a stronger trading relationship with the EU. That's our EU reset work, in a way that finishes the trade deal I'm trying to negotiate with India and the one with the Gulf. And what I want is to be able to say, in a very challenging world where this will disrupt a lot of how the global economy operates, wherever you want to do business, if you want to export, the UK becomes the best placed country with political stability, with market access arrangements, with the kind of laws, rules, tax regime that makes us the best place to be, no matter where in the world you want to do business. I believe that is possible, and that is the focus of all of my work, not just with the US, but with those other key trading partners.
OK, Jonathan Reynolds, thanks very much indeed.
Thank you. We are joined by Labour peer broadcaster Baroness Ayesha Hazarika, former Conservative Culture Minister, Lord Ed Vaizey. Tough spot Jonathan Reynolds is in.
What's he going to do? I mean, if America is making it harder to buy our cars, why don't we make it harder for Americans to sell their cars here? It seems an obvious retaliation.
Well, I think they just want to take it slowly at the moment, which I don't blame them for, because I don't think nobody can out-hot-head Donald Trump, right? Let's be absolutely honest. And in terms of trading might, they are a bigger player than us. We also don't import that much from...
Sorry,
is someone calling you?
That was Donald Trump calling.
It was the best on the phone saying, don't mention that.
Don't raise that thing.
Again.
Look, we don't know what's happening behind the door of number 10, and Jonathan Reynolds wasn't going to reveal to us the negotiations that are going on.
As he kept saying.
Yes, he's not going to reveal his red lines. What we don't want is for anyone to be, thrown under the bus here. We don't want our children's online safety thrown under the bus
exactly.
by deregulating what the tech bros do, and we don't want our agriculture to be thrown under a bus if welfare standards
Hormone beef, exactly.
But
no, I mean, I think...
Did you feel reassured by the fact...
Look, I said it earlier on the programme that I think that Keir Starmer's played it very well. I think you've got to slightly roll with the punches. You've got to see how this plays out. Ayesha mentioned that, sometimes Trump imposes tariffs, then rolls back. I think it is bad tactics to escalate immediately. I think one waits and sees. It is frustrating, it is difficult, it is unfair, but we have to see, to a certain extent, we have to give this time to play out, see the direction of the administration.
Can I talk to you? Because I know, Ayesha, you were very moved by the interview that we did a little bit earlier on the programme with the mum of a young man, 28-year-old James Hodgkinson, who was killed when Jacob Dunne, who was 19 at the time, threw a punch. James fell to the floor and hit his head, and 9 days later died. Joan, sitting alongside her son's killer, for having forgiven him, seeing him turn his life around with her support. Instinctively, I feel I would want to scream at him, it shouldn't be you here, it should be my son. But it is remarkable what they're achieving together, isn't it?
It's incredible. And I went to see the play, and the play is fantastic. I urge everybody to go and see it. It is phenomenal. And the first half of the play, I have so much rage for this Jacob character. I'm like, what a horrible, horrible, horrible person to have done this. And then the second half, when you're taken through the restorative justice, at the end of it, I was crying so much I couldn't speak for about... The entire theatre was just sobbing. The journey that they take you on, because it's not all, happy, clappy right from the beginning. They take you on the very, very difficult journey that Joan and her husband and Jacob, and you learn about Jacob's family as well. And I think it's a play that makes you think so much, and it's such a privilege for me to meet Joan and Jacob. I interviewed James Graham, who wrote the play, who's a fantastic playwright. And when I watched it on the stage, I almost couldn't quite believe it until I've actually met them today. Well, what a privilege for me to meet them here at fabulous Good Morning Britain, and for you guys to be... And I'm so glad you did that interview, because they managed to capture the essence of that 2.5-hour play. The takeaway is, look, I think Joan is a saint. I think her humanity, her compassion, this act of kindness, which Jacob said had this ripple effect, I think we could all try and be a bit more Joan, but I understand how difficult that must be for people.
Summed up by Nicola on X. Wow, a remarkable story. I really admired Joan for her ability to forgive. Well done to Jacob for turning his life around. And rest in peace, James.
Well, it was an incredibly compelling interview, and you were getting very emotional during it, Stan. So, I hear what Ayesha says about the play. I want to now go and see the play. And
I feel like I'm instinctively stuck in the first half.
Absolutely. Absolutely, and I suspect 99%.
The point about restorative justice is it takes you into that ability, compassion to forgive.
And I think it is
you never know what's going to happen.
Exceptional. But it is, dare I say it, it's kind of got a religious connotation. We are taught, by religions like Christianity to forgive people. And this is a compelling, real-life example of how the most counterintuitive thing you can possibly do to forgive the person who has taken away from you the most precious thing in your life can end up helping you to heal.
Thank you. And the power of drama as well, in a week when we're talking about
adolescence.
Thank you
very
both
much.
Very much indeed.